EP021. And I'm your host, Melvin Tan here. And really looking forward to talking to you here today about this topic of the crisis is a terrible thing to waste. Now, who said that? Good old Paul Romer. Now, Paul Romer, in case you are not familiar with him, is a Nobel laureate for the economics prize, and what won him the Nobel Prize was basically this. He was studying the growth of economies, and the growth of economies typically can be explained by capital investment. And however, with capital investment, there is always, this subjected to this thing called diminishing returns. Now, if you are familiar with, classical economics, basically what it's saying is that, when you go to a country, and especially in a country where they are starting to get developed, one of the main things that the government would spend on would be on infrastructure, because twofold. One is that domestically, to depend on consumption, it's going to be pretty much difficult because the people may not be well educated, and so they might not have the earning power nor the spending power. So consumption is going to be difficult, and before you can bring in investment, there has to be infrastructure in place. And so that's the reason why government would invest in their country by putting in infrastructure. So twofold. One is because it increases government spending. The other thing is that once you have the infrastructure in place, then it makes it possible for companies or organizations to want to invest in your country. And so that kind of have a spillover effect. However, with capital investment, there is what we call a diminishing returns. So as you put in more and more roads, for example, the returns from having more roads will increase to a certain point, and at the tipping point itself, it will increase at a decreasing rate, right? So initially, it's going to increase at an increasing rate. But it's at a tipping point, it's where it's going to increase at a decreasing rate. And when it increases at a decreasing rate, that is when you have this whole idea of diminishing returns. And so Paul Romer actually talks about, apart from capital investment, there are other forms of investment or there are other ways that the economies will grow. And the way to actually explain that is this thing called total factor productivity, now, or TFP for short. So total factor productivity basically says that, well, here is where it gets mathematical. When you run a regression and the error term, whatever that error term is, that is the TFP itself. So and at one point in time, yours truly was actually at the university, and I was a research scholar on the topic of TFP. And so when I look back at some of the things, so how does this align to the crisis is a terrible thing to waste? One is, of course, is said by Paul Romer. The other thing is that I'm one of the few people who have been through several recessions. And when you talk about recession, for example, in the first recession that I can remember was in 1985. 1985, I was in secondary one, and that was a pivotal point in my life because that was when I go into an era where I become more independent and I am better able to manage myself. But during that time, because of the recession itself, you can actually feel that there are many people who got hit many people who kind of lost their jobs. And although my dad didn't lose his job, but in our neighborhood, I know several people who actually lost their jobs. So that was part one. Part two was in the early 1990s, and that was when I've already finished my junior college and I was in the army. Again, I kind of experienced that more at a closer to heart, because at a point in time I could see that my dad's work was actually affected, because it was kind of a global thing. And then came 1997. 1997 was a hard one, because that was when I graduated with my degree. And at a point in time, looking forward to graduating and looking forward to getting a great job, and the last thing you need is a recession. And so what do you do during a time where you are faced with recession and you have just newly graduated? Do you take any job that comes your way, or what do you do? Do you wait for the right job to appear, because you never know how long this recession is going to go? And so are you going to wait out and wait till the right offer comes along, or what do you do? And the reason why I'm saying that is because we are inside to go into a recession, and probably the biggest recession, probably the strongest recession that we have ever seen, at least in Singapore's history. And so the question to you is really, what are you going to do? Because arguably, I think many people are not just going to lose their jobs, but this time around, we're definitely looking at a structural unemployment. So what's the difference between a transitional unemployment and a structural unemployment? A transitional unemployment is where when the economy goes through a recession, and when the economy picks back up, the jobs come back, right? The investment comes back, and everything kind of returns back to equilibrium or the norm, or status quo. However, in a structural unemployment situation, that is where jobs that were lost are not going to come back. And the last time that we went through a structural recession, a structural unemployment, was in 1997, because the earlier ones were that the jobs were lost, but then once the economy picks up, the jobs comes back. But in 1997, I recall very vividly that even people who are professionals, people who are many years as an executive, they began to lose their jobs. Even accountants began to lose their jobs. So as a result of that, you can see that there are certain aspects of work that previously was essential, now has become non-essential, right? Or something, a job that was secure becomes not secure anymore, or a job that was clearly needed before that, now there is not a need anymore. And so once again, I can give you an example very, very close to heart, and that is in the industry of tourism, because my dad, like I told you, has been a licensed tour guide for most of his adult life, and one of the key thing was that when the internet came about, when smartphones came about, and when people, the average guys like you and I, when we travel, we no longer need a tour guide, right? I mean, we can search on the internet. We have TripAdvisor, and we have all this stuff that can get us around. And I mean, in Singapore, it's so small, and literally you can find your way around anywhere. And it's unlikely that you're going to get conned as well. So as a tourist, you could literally just depend on your smartphone and you can get around. However, and so as a result of that, tourist guides were being displaced, and they don't need that many anymore. And so no matter how hard you try, no matter how innovative you are, or no matter what you do, some of these industries are just not coming back, and it's gone forever. That say, with every transition, with every structural change, that of course will be a need for new type of work. So for example, excuse me, for example, if you look at, 10 years ago, jobs like influencer, all right? Let's not discuss whether influencers are legit or not. That's another thing altogether. But, jobs like influencer was not even a thing, right? These days, kids will tell you that they want to be a YouTuber, right? These days, parents are sending their kids for coding classes. We'll come to that in a bit, right? So you can see that there are certain aspects of work, there are certain aspects of jobs, right, in general, that were non-existent 10 years ago, but now, it has become prominent, right? It has risen up in terms of prominence. And so the question really is, what is it that you are going to do during this time of a crisis? Going back to what Paul Romer say, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste, because in the crisis itself, that is where, new technologies are being embraced, a new way of doing things are being embraced, and, certain things are being fast-tracked. And so, if you are still holding on to that way that, it must be done this way, it has to be written this particular way, or it has to be done in a particular way. In other words, if you are longing for going back to what we were pre-COVID-19, you ought to seriously examine your worldview itself and to ask yourself if that is valid at all, right? So coming back to the coding bit, a couple of years back, at least 2 years ago, many schools were talking about, well, we're going to send our kids, we're going to have coding as part of the curriculum. And in fact, the Ministry of Education here, I think last year, they instituted, or they passed that policy to say that all primary school students above P3 or P4, I can't remember, they're going to take up coding. And I got news for you, because as a parent, you may or may not know unless you're a technologist, but I've got news for you, because right now the rage is about this thing called no code. Now, what does no code means? Let me give you an example. If you have ever wanted to build a website, right? You will probably think of WordPress. And the reason why you think of WordPress is because, it's open source. And because it's open source, that's why it's got so much, resources and plugins and tools and all the good stuff that makes the website works. Okay. And however, WordPress isn't the friendliest thing in the world, because you need to know a fair bit of code to be able to put a website together, at least before Gutenberg, right? So if you do not know what I'm talking about, well, obviously you need to pay attention all the more, because we are going to the new no code era, right? So when Gutenberg came into the picture for WordPress itself, essentially you do not need to code, you do not need to know coding, right? You do not need to know any coding at all. You can actually design the website the way you wanted it to be. So if you want, the carousel on the website, you can have it. If you want a 3-column thing on your website, you can have it. If you want, a hero picture, testimonials, you can have it. And all you need to do is to just drag and drop, right? Something that we are very familiar with, especially these days with Windows and Mac, right? It's all just drag and drop. Back in those days, you actually have to type in, CD, Windows, and all that stuff before you can actually start up the computer. But these days, when you turn on the computer, it just works, right? So it in the online world right now, there is this wave that is going on, and this wave is about no code. So right now, even with WordPress itself, you actually do not need to know any code at all. You can just drag and drop blocks, and you can create a website that you so desire, as long as your design skills are up to mark. And so here's the thing, right? If you think about it, we are going to an era whereby, knowing or having the ability to code is no longer important, because right now there are tons of tools. And in tomorrow's webinar, I'll be sharing two of the no-code tools that that I'm going to be sharing with the folks, right? So there are tons of tools that allows you to not know any code, but you are able to set up things like databases. You are able to do automation. You are able to do a chatbot. You are able to do a landing page. You are able to do automated marketing campaigns. You are able to drip out content, meaning when people sign up, they will get one piece of the content given up to them every other day, the kind of thing. So you in the past, if you want something like this, there are two options. One is that you either code it yourself, or you have to hire someone who is a developer to kind of do that for you. But right now, all you need to do is, of course, it's in most cases you have to pay. But the tools that I'm going to be sharing with you tomorrow on the webinar itself, it's going to be free. So the thing is that right now you can actually get started creating your automated workflow, and to be able to use that, and without having to know any code at all. Now, what that means is that whether you know how to code or not has become irrelevant, right? I mean, yes, there are still advantages if you know how to code, provided you want to be writing applications, you want to be writing SaaS products and all that stuff, right? If that is what you're after. But if that's not what you're after, if you're using that as a tool, then you do not really need to know how to code. And in fact, you do not even need to spend high costs in terms of software development. You can actually sit down and with me, you and I could work out something, and I could help you identify what is the no-code tool that you can use. And if you like, I can set it up for you, and you'll be on your way, right? How crazy is that? Now, I'm not a developer, right? The only two computer language that I know, they are probably both obsolete. One is Fortran, and the other one is HTML. Not even HTML5, right? HTML. And both of them are, I think, I would say Fortran is definitely, ancient, obsolete. HTML, by extension of that, HTML5, CSS, that might still be relevant. That's it. That gave me that know-how, that ability to think about, how I can configure things. But you who just want to piece things together, or you just want a system that works, you do not need to know coding. You do not need to know code. You can rely on people like me to just tell me like, oh, I want to do this and this and this. Is that possible? Or how do we make it possible? And how do we automate that? Well, I'm the guy, right? I'm the guy that will help you piece all these pieces together and create your flywheel and make it automated, so that you just need to set it once and the thing will run forever. So like, for example, now I will be launching a new audio class which is going to be focused on building the flywheel. I'll give you a bit more details in subsequent episodes itself. But the building your flywheel audio class is done in a no code, using no code tools, and the best part is that it's done for free, right? And so that's going to be one of the things that I'm going to be covering in the webinar. Unfortunately, the webinar it's full based on registration. However, if you like, you could always drop me a comment, and I'll be more than glad to see if I can put you in. And in the webinar itself, what we're going to be talking about is, algorithm can change, right? Algorithm can change, and that's not something that you need to be bothered about, because if you're using these 3 techniques, it doesn't matter to you, right? Because those are fundamentals. And as long as the fundamentals remain the same, right? I mean, whether it's 1970s or it's, 2020, right? When it comes to the audience, the same principle apply. The fundamentals remain. What's in it for me? If you are not able to answer that question, then it's going to be terribly difficult for you to be able to hold on to people's attention. So what's in it for me? I mean, that didn't change in 1970s. That's definitely not going to change in 2020 and forward. So that's number one. Number two is that, when it comes to getting people to trust you, in other words, getting people to say that, yeah, that's my guy, and I believe he can help me. So to get people to trust you, it has always been the case. It's just that, now even more so. And the way to do that is basically show, not tell, right? Demonstrate that you can do that. And that's part of the reason why I'm doing this live stream every day, because I'm demonstrating what is possible. And hopefully that's going to inspire you to, want to take action as well. So second principle basically is show, not tell, right? I mean, everyone can tell a great story, but can you do the work? That's the question. And the third thing is that, in all business, you need a system, right? You need a system. Now, the system doesn't have to be difficult. The system doesn't have to be complex. The system just has to make sure that, at the end of the day, this few things are taken care of. One is that you're able to get the attention of the people that you want to reach. Second thing is you are able to use the best technique to demonstrate to them that you are the guy for the job, right? And the third thing is you need a system to be able to do that for you on a consistent basis, and on the basis that doesn't rely on you being there. Okay? It doesn't rely or doesn't need you to be there. Because, pre-COVID-19, yeah, well, some of us are still saying that, well, it's better if we can do it in person. Yes, true, right? But during this lockdown period, it has been evidently show that you do not need to be you do not need to be there in person. Okay, and some of those things can be done online, and some of those things can even be done in a recorded video itself. So you do not need to be there. You do not need even to do it live. You can do it recorded, right? And so the best way to do that is to actually teach someone, because when you are able to teach that person, you're able to tell me something that I do not know. You're able to teach me how to explore and to look at things. I'm going to be impressed with you, right? And the third thing, hasn't changed since the day of industrialization up until now. Even in today's context itself, it's business systems, right? Whether you call it workflow, whether you call it processes, it's systems. You need some kind of a system in your business. Without that, without the workflow, without the process itself, everything is going to fall apart, or you're just going to do it manually. So it's like, this very simple system is like when someone opt in for your email newsletter or download a copy of your ebook, for example, when someone do that, what is your what do you do? Do you actually have to open up your email and send out that ebook by yourself? I mean, it's crazy. It's 2020, right? So that cannot be done on a manual, that cannot be done manually. It has to be automated. But automation would require you to write some code, a couple of years back. But now we are talking about a no-code movement, right? A no-code movement. In other words, you and I do not need to know a single line of code. We do not need to write a single line of code, and yet we're able to get that done. Isn't it amazing? Right? And so that's what we're going to be talking about in tomorrow's webinar. If you are interested in joining us on the webinar, just leave me a comment and I'll be sure to, take you there. And so, we've way past 20 minutes. And so if you're watching, please, leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up, let me know you're there. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.